I am going to try to build my own desk today, and I'm gonna do it with this pile of free wood. Now, there were squirrels living in the box of wood, and I had to deal with that, cleaning and all sorts of stuff, but I was able to find some pieces that I thought would work, and I'm genuinely happy with the results. I did face a lot of problems and made a lot of mistakes along the way, though. I need a home studio desk and an office desk in general, so I don't have to sit on the edge of a bed when working on the computer anymore. And because I'm a musician, I need somewhere to create music besides the random corner of an unused room. And because I make videos, I need somewhere better to store my camera and tripod, so when someone comes over, there isn't a camera pointing directly at the guest bed. So I'm turning this room into the studio. It's kind of a mess right now. Basically get rid of these completely. Take one of these white little shelves and have it as just a bookshelf. I kind of got a lot of room back here to store stuff. I'm thinking, get it out of this corner and center it here in the room. I'm gonna build a desk. I had this crazy idea that I would just wing it, which was a crazy idea, resulting in numerous mistakes I had to remedy. I didn't want blueprints, I didn't want a plan. I thought that I could kind of envision what I wanted and build it on the fly. Like I said, I ended up being really happy with the end result, but I'll tell you right now, it didn't take a week like I had originally envisioned. I started the project the first week of December and didn't finish until January. It took about a month, and I'm not a woodworker, at all, so I overestimated my skills a little. There was a lot of cleaning that I had to do first. You saw a glimpse of that Christmas tree. I'll have to deal with that later. But here's my big motivation for building the desk. I had good intentions. My wife and I have this one spare room in our house where basically all the junk ends up being collected. Yep, this room. Part of the reason that happens is because we have little to no storage space in our house. I tried my best originally to make the room as organized as possible, but those plastic divider shelves just look cheap and are good at being stuffed full of things. So I wanted to make a space that was beautiful, functional, and would bring out my creativity while writing and recording music, while at the same time looking good for my wife. There's a reason she doesn't really trust me with the responsibility of decorating the house, but I saw this desk project as an opportunity to prove her wrong and hopefully really impress her. Yeah, making my wife happy is far more important than building an audio desk for myself. I'm a Christian, so I want to try my best to serve her. After all, one of my favorite people ever said something like that. He didn't want to be served, but to serve. I'm out here cutting the edges off the plank to make them nice and square, and it was starting to just get really cold. See if you can hear that rain. Rain does serve a pretty frustrating role in this story, and you'll see why, but I've been trying to force myself to really appreciate it because it's the reason why everything in Oregon is so beautiful. Look at this. This is all that rain that I was talking about right here. It is just crazy, and it's just pooling like a lake. All different. That whole walkway right there is underwater. Okay, here's a reason why the rain is annoying. I went to my truck and there were sprouts growing inside my truck. Like literally life growing in my truck because it had gotten so wet. I took a fan to dry it off and that ended up working out, but I had to keep it in the garage for a few days, and I think I found where the problem was, but more on that later. My wood is over here. A friend of mine gave me all the cedar. I thought they were like big planks. They ended up being like kind of small, crafty size stuff. But would still be really expensive if I bought it. And it's like, a lot of it is milled and shaped. Squirrels get in here. But I should be able to piece through. The idea is to pull out, a bunch of these planks and just line them up together. Kind of starting this project assuming that I have enough pieces there, and then the job of pulling those bins out and just puzzle piecing them together flat, and should be able to make it work. We'll see. There ended up only being a little bit of damage from the squirrels. I was able to sand that stuff off, but first I needed something to glue all the planks onto. Just got back from Home Depot and it's raining. So this is what I chose, the bottom. So I have all that cedar. I'll lay out my pattern and cut and put the cedar on top of these, and then figure out a way to finish the edge so it's not just exposed particle board and make it look nice. But I needed like a base to build the whole desk on. So as it continues to just pour and pour outside, I find it really hard to appreciate the rain, but thankfully I was able to figure out how to fix my truck. Here's what I did. I took tape and I taped off as straight of a line as I could, and then smoothed it out with like a rubber glove. And this was the problem side. I'm almost positive this is where the leak was coming from. That was definitely the problem, and I fixed it. I'm really happy that I don't have to deal with sprouts growing in my truck anymore, although that was pretty funny. I appreciated the humor. But like I said, I'm in the garage, I'm staying dry, and I'm busting out this pattern for my table, and I'm not really thinking ahead. I'm just kind of making sure that the ends don't line up and that the pattern more or less looks cool, and I ended up getting the pattern on the first try. So I got every piece labeled and numbered, and I have 63. Gonna be 63 pieces. For like 120 cuts I just did on all these pieces just to keep the end square so that they could have, you know, the tightest butt joint possible. And they're just laid out loosely right now. I ended up setting myself up for a world of pain, and you will see why in just a little bit here. All right, this is the first look at my pattern, and I'm pretty happy with it. Now I just have to figure out how I'm going to clamp it and glue it all down, because I have no idea what I'm going to do, but it's a cool first look. Pretty happy. I think it looks great. Looks can be extremely deceptive and not align with reality. Trust me. Figure out how to glue and squish all the pieces together this way. I was only able to borrow 2 pipe clamps. How in the world was I going to glue this down? I had absolutely no idea, so I needed to take a little bit of time to think and also clean up my yard. It was 2 days before Christmas and my yard looked horrible, so my desk had to be put on hold. But here's a lesson in not necessarily doing everything by yourself. This is a DIY video, but doing everything completely by yourself can cause a lot of problems. I ended up actually really destroying my back and being out for like Christmas and Christmas Eve, just lying on the floor, Tylenol, ibuprofen on rotation. You can see here me trying to do this by myself, and I finally give up, do the smart thing, and ask my best friend who's about 20 feet away inside, and we just pull it to the curb, no problem. I honestly couldn't tell you enough how much I really appreciate him as a best friend. He's an awesome father and an awesome husband. All of the tools that you see me using, pretty much literally all of the tools are his. He's so gracious letting me use them, and really the only reason I was able to make this desk or do a lot of things is because of him. Now I know this is a video about building a DIY desk and all that, but I just have to take a second to just emphasize how important great friendships are. It can all kind of be summed up in this saying: profuse are the kisses of an enemy, but faithful are the wounds of a friend. And my best friend has been that kind of friend, not just there to pat my back and agree with everything I say, but honestly tell me the truth and help me grow as a husband and a friend myself. It should be pretty obvious what I'm doing here. I'm kind of realigning my pattern, making sure that everything's okay before I cut the backer board. Now I have it 8 feet long. I only need a 6 foot long table, so I cut that section. No problem, super easy, went according to plan. And then I cut the length to make it a 2.5 foot depth table, and that's where I run into problems. You'll see right here. Well, I just wasted like 15 minutes measuring, and I'm just gonna freehand it. So I'm just gonna go really slow and follow the line as good as I can, and it shouldn't matter too much. But, woo-hoo! I think it worked. I messed up this corner, so this is where I made my first attempt. I don't know. Which, the way that I had it designed, this is gonna be the corner when you come in. So it will be visible. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'll be able to figure it out. I think what I meant when I said it's not that big of a deal was that I'm going to procrastinate and figure it out later. After all, I am a musician, so I need to spend some time making music, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. This isn't like some kind of like recreation I did for the video to show you what it's like. This is literally probably the best setup I've had for making music ever. I just have this little desk that's for my cat. You can see her little food bowl there and her little bed. And I get to set up my iPad and work out song ideas. Now pay attention to this desk because it does come in really, really important here in just a little bit. You'll see why. I didn't really want to have any excuses for not making music, and there's a lot of excuses in life for a lot of things, but I genuinely enjoy creating songs and writing, and I'll do it any way that I can. And my current setup right here is just an iPad, and the mic on the iPad is pretty fantastic. If you want to hear what it sounds like, there's actually several of my songs on Spotify or wherever you listen to music that the vocals are just me singing straight into the iPad. I'm pretty impressed with it. Now, enough messing around. I do have to clean out this room in order to get this new desk up in here, and that's where this old table comes in. Like I said just a couple seconds ago, it's really, really important, and here's why. Those legs are exactly the legs that I'm going to use on the new table. Like literally those exact legs. Those were legs that I bought on Etsy, I think, over 10 years ago for a really good deal, like 20 or 30 bucks. They're steel, and that's a big problem because I didn't paint them the first time, and I probably should have, and so I learned my lesson this time, and I'm definitely going to paint them. I'm going to paint them black, but that causes a whole nother world of problems. Yet again, kind of a reoccurring theme here. You'll see. There's a lot of areas in my life that I could work on for improvement, and one of those areas is thinking ahead and planning, because trying to remove rust by hand was probably not a good idea from the start, like regardless of the tools that I had, especially since after trying for a really long time and just getting dirty and seems like smearing rust everywhere, I drove literally less than 10 minutes down the road and bought a $7 attachment that just went right on my drill, and instantly the rust was coming off way easier than by hand. But the problems didn't really end there. Although this tool did really help take the rust off, my bad back that I was talking about earlier from Christmas, yeah, it got better, but it was really being put to the test here with these legs. I was bending, leaning, standing, hunching, every position you could possibly think of, and it still took a really long time because there's 4 legs, 3 hairpins on each leg. They're round, so you have to get 360 degrees all the way around it. That's all to say it took a really, really long time, but eventually I was able to get all the rust off. See, here's a look at one of the legs completely rusted out, and one of the legs that I had finished. Of course, I went through and finished all of them, but I wanted to show you guys a little comparison. Yeah, I really should have painted those legs the first time around when I made the table. I don't know, I thought like the bare steel was like hipster and that it looked cool, and so I think that's maybe what I was going for, but that wasn't a really smart choice because I think the paint would have preserved those legs, and I probably could have just unscrewed them from that old table and screwed them onto the new table, or if anything, just threw on a different coat of paint to match the paint that I wanted, and it would have saved me an entire day of work on this desk. I figured out what I think I'm gonna do for gluing it down, and this should work, so let me show you here. Here, 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 and here. And so I'll have those pieces glued down and clamped. I'll do the next row. That explanation probably didn't make any sense, but it really doesn't matter because my plan wasn't gonna work anyways. I'm starting to do what I was saying I was gonna do, and basically the pieces that you can see right now, I was gonna glue down first. What I thought was an excellent plan turned out to be a nightmare, and it took literally less than 5 minutes until I realized that. My camera ends up dying, but I capture the rest of it on my phone. But as you can see here, I'm starting to turn some wheels in my brain, and I'm thinking, hey, if I glue down this first layer here and I clamp them really tight, I can't fit the next layer in. I'm gonna run into a problem. So I think, well, maybe I'll glue 2 layers down at a time and then clamp those. I don't really know why I wanted to work just layer by layer. I think it's because I didn't have that many clamps, and I was worried if I just did the whole table, I couldn't clamp it downward to the particle board, towards each other, left and right and up and down. There was a lot of different angles that I had to do, and I just really couldn't figure it out. All right, I don't really need to explain anymore what's going on. I think that you should just watch this and enjoy the stupidity of me trying to figure this out. Like literally I had no plan. I have a rubber mallet, a couple of clamps. I just threw a whole bunch of glue on, probably honestly not enough glue, and then I'm just trying to make it look good. I don't know, I really made mistakes here, a lot of mistakes, and you'll see what happens. I resorted to brute strength, just using my hands and my fingers to try to bend pieces back into shape, and a lot of anxiety, a lot of confusion, a lot of redoing and retrying, and eventually I ended up with something that looked like this. At least at the moment, I was happy. It seemed like every piece was gonna be glued down, and I just needed to put a flat piece of board on top of it and a bunch of weight and put it on top of this table, and that was also a really huge mistake, but more on that at the end of the video. So that old table that I took the legs from, I needed to replace it because my cat likes to sit on top of it. That's where she eats her food. If she doesn't have her food up there, my dog, which you saw earlier and you see right here, he steals the food. So I needed some kind of replacement. Now, thankfully, my father-in-law had this old art table that he wasn't going to use, and it was pretty awesome. I like to do some drawing and painting as well, and I thought that it just looked nice, and honestly, we needed something for my cat to sit on, so I accepted it. And like with a lot of things in life and this project itself, it just took a little bit of cleaning, a little bit of patience, a little bit of time, and you can make it look really nice. It was mostly, honestly, just dirty and dusty in every crevice because I don't think it had been used for a long time. And a couple of the things, the legs and pins and connections or whatever you call them, were loose, and so I just literally just needed to tighten and clean. But you have to remember, I'm not just making an audio desk for myself. I need that entire room to look nice. And so I want it to be nice for my dog, I want it to be nice for my cat, and I want my wife to think that it looks nice. So that's where this art desk comes in. It was also sort of like a mini challenge in the midst of my big challenge of, can I take this desk that's already made but kind of ugly and dirty and needs some tightening and fixing, and can I fix that? It was a moment to prove to myself that, yeah, I can do desk work, I can deal with desks. I was really proud when I was able to get that glass off. It was heavy, thick, and awesome, and I was able to wipe underneath and make it look extra clean, and I felt like this kind of DIY master at this point. Okay, so now I run into a problem with my art desk. There's some kind of bolt, some kind of screw missing, but I honestly couldn't deal with this right now. More on that later. I'll figure that out. I'm super eager to get to my main desk and see if my cedar glued down the way that it should. I'm super excited for this reveal. I got my nice camera set up. It's sunny outside. I'm really hopeful that everything went good and according to plan, even though I didn't really have a plan. But immediately after I took those weights off, I saw that there were problems. There were gaps everywhere. Again, I tried using brute force to fix this, which is kind of hilarious considering that the glue's dried. It's been 24 hours. I don't think that the wood can budge, and if I moved it, it's probably not a good thing. It'll just pop off. I was starting to panic a little bit. I've spent 2 weeks on this desk already, and what I saw was not good. There were gaps and cracks and warps and twists, and I kind of was starting to feel like this desk wasn't going to work. I even thought that I would just crawl on top of it at one point and like I don't know, force it down with gravity, even though the glue's dried. So I guess I eventually got satisfied and I thought I'd put it down, and big mistake. Oh man, big mistake. Boom, missing piece. Boom, missing piece. You know, everything is going to plan when you bust out the hammer to put in one screw. I have grabbed even more tools. Try to screw one screw in. I just needed to take off these 4 screws so I could just lift the tray. And so I'm gonna lift the tray and then I'll be able to screw that in. I had to abandon my main desk and return to my art desk because I needed a little bit of a confidence boost, and I figured if I could kind of just figure out this one screw and this one bolt and fix this desk, then maybe I could come back to my main desk and fix that one too. Okay, so the sound of my GoPro goes out, but really all I'm saying right here is I ended up having to grab every single tool that I own to put a single bolt in. But it did end up boosting my confidence a little bit. I was able to fix that drawer and also modify it. So now the desk is all tight, it's clean, it's looking good. And that drawer that used to stick out a couple of inches, I fixed the drawer slides and now it sits flush with the rest of the desk. So I'm super excited about that. And I'm just kind of explaining what I want to use it for and how awesome I think I am for fixing that drawer. You know, ignoring the main desk that I'm working on and how I messed that up, but I'm kind of building confidence to go back and fix that up. So all I need to do now is just ask my wife for a little bit of help picking this up, and we can carry it upstairs into the room, see how it looks.
Should be able to fit. Push around the corner. You gotta lift it a little higher, Tom. Oh, oops. I was able to pull the glass out and clean underneath there. Nice. Oh, God, no boy. Scoop. He's not on. I'm not even falling in all day. Boom.
There wasn't much that I could do to fix the desk besides just re-glue those pieces down, and that's what I ended up doing, and it worked to my surprise. So now I was on to the task of cutting the ends of the cedar that stick out past all nice and flush. This was one thing that I thought of ahead of time that I think was actually a really smart idea, ended up working really well. Basically what's going on here is I took that extra piece of particle board and I clamped it down, and I used that as a straight edge to run my saw across so that I could cut all the cedar at the exact same length, and somehow I ended up messing that up, even with a guide to follow. But no problem, just had to do another pass with the saw, ended up getting all the pieces on that side flush, so now my edges of the cedar are all flush, looking nice, and I'm moving on to what I was most excited about for this project, the sanding. Here's where I can really get a good look for the first time at what the finished desk might end up being. I'm trying to think ahead because I know that I have those gaps and cracks. You can probably even just see them from this angle, and I need to fill those up somehow. I don't want to have all these cracks in my desktop. I had that in the old desk that I built a long time ago, and it just collects dirt, dust, and hair, and it's not a good thing. I want this desk to be beautiful. I want it to look nice. I want my wife to like it. I want to like it. I want it to be useful, and I want to take my time. So I am taking my time, and I don't want to make any mistakes, even though I do. So somehow on the sanding stage, I thought nothing could go wrong, but the cedar is soft, and I ended up lifting up this like little chip of the wood, and I tried using super glue to glue it back down, and that was apparently a huge mistake. Nobody told me that super glue doesn't work at all with cedar, and that cedar is more absorptive than a sponge. But eventually I used wood glue, you know, the thing that I use to glue wood for the rest of the desk, and I was able to get that piece down. But here's just a little bit of hilarity of me trying to glue it down with super glue. I don't know, maybe I thought that it would glue faster and that it'd be done faster so I could keep sanding. Maybe that was my thought process. Again, maybe trying to be lazy. I'm just trying to play it by ear. I want to solve problems as they come up. That's part of the learning process and part of this project, and now I know super glue does nothing with cedar, at least. And so begins the long journey of sanding, but I'm really excited about this. Even though it's taken me a long time, I'm starting to get the first glimpse of what this finished desk is gonna look like, and I like what I see. There's those problems that I have to deal with that I was talking about, and I knew that I wanted to collect as much sawdust as possible. That's what you see in that little plastic cup there. So power sander done, I'm moving on to hand sanding with a finer grit, and I just made my own little hand sander here with just a stapler and an old piece of wood. And the table is looking good. I mean, what do you think? I think it looks pretty great at this point. My confidence is definitely increasing after that big glue mishap, but it instantly goes down here. Okay, so here's my attempt to address the problem with the gaps. I'm gonna use that sawdust that I set aside and some wood glue and make some kind of paste, but I know that I need to put tape on either side so that I don't end up just smearing a bunch of unwanted glue everywhere and having to do more sanding. But more on that later. Christmas time is over and I need to take down our tree and do some more cleaning. I need to make our house look nice in general everywhere and not just waste all my time on my desk project. I had a plan for how I was going to fill in those gaps and cracks, and I just needed a little bit of break from the desk to think about it, let it settle, and then come back to make sure I didn't make a big mistake. Because at this point, I realized if I did make a huge mistake with my desk, there was really no going back. Now, I don't necessarily show it, but I'm running out of cedar. If I make a huge mistake, I can't replace this desk. It's 6 feet by 2.5 feet, and I don't have enough to do the top again. And I need to save cedar for something really important for this desk that you'll see here in a little bit once I'm done with this. Honestly, getting rid of the old Christmas tree is one of my favorite things. And I usually have this machete that I use every year to chop off the limbs, but I couldn't find it for the life of me. And I ended up borrowing my friend's tool again, thank you. But I mean, seriously, check these things out. I just squeeze the trigger and it just cuts through anything, almost any thickness. Pretty impressive. I can't really remember what I'm saying right here. Probably something about how I used to do this method as a kid because my dad always made us clean up the yard debris. We literally had this huge property, which was super awesome, and my dad made us work all the time, which I'm really thankful for. It honestly instilled in me some pretty good work ethic and integrity, doing things that you're not even gonna get paid for, doing things that aren't fun, doing things that are cold, wet, outside, sticky, and dirty. And this is one of those techniques that I learned growing up and carried it into my adulthood. You just take the sticks and you shove them in and you clip them and you clip them and you clip them and you clip them, and you can end up fitting way more yard debris into the yard debris barrel than you honestly think. And that's another thing about this desk project, and a big reason why I just kind of wanted to do it on the fly. You learn a lot of lessons doing it that way as opposed to just following something step by step. So here's a look at the desk before I put the wood filler in, and I'm just giving you guys a good close look here at the gaps so you can see them. I think I kind of overestimated the GoPro's power here and it's a little out of focus, but you can definitely see them. Even from far away you can see those cracks. Now, I was really excited about this part. Online I did look up a couple of strategies and a couple of ideas of how to do this, but there weren't really any that I liked. I again kind of wanted to try my own spin and variation on it. So instead of some people, they just dumped glue and wood dust straight into the cracks, I wanted to create this putty ahead of time. I did a test and I ended up creating this consistency that's a little bit like brown sugar. It's crumbly and dry. It doesn't stick to your hands when you grab it, but you can kind of squeeze it and compact it and form it into a particular shape. And I think my thought process was that the more of the cedar dust that I use, the closer to the color of the desk is going to be, and you won't see the cracks as much. Which, honestly, I think it ended up working, so. All you need to do is you take the little wood dust paste, you kind of roll it up into a tube worm shape, and then you shove it down into the cracks. Okay, I play guitar, and this was a huge mistake. I ended up trying to push that dry brown sugary paste into each crack, and as you can see with the amount of blue tape, there are a lot of cracks. I ended up really callousing my index and my middle finger doing this, but hey, I think it worked out. Until I made this huge mistake, yet again. So I was peeling up the tape after filling in the gaps, which I think worked out really good, and I peeled this one up, and it just lifted a chunk off. Everything's done. I'm peeling back the blue tape to get a look at the desk, and the cedar just lifts up with the blue tape. That's what I get for buying the cheap Amazon blue tape. So I ended up gluing it down with wood glue, not super glue this time, and it ended up popping off. I lost it. I just kind of sanded it down so you wouldn't see it. And I was on to painting. So remember how I painted those legs black? Exact same paint can, exact same color, and I'm gonna paint the underside of this table black. Now my thought process is the cedar, I want it to look nice. I want it to be the center point of the desk. I want this natural, nice wood to be what your eye is drawn to. Plus, I know underneath there's gonna be wires, a bunch of equipment. It's just the underside of a desk, and it's this ugly particle board, which I probably shouldn't have used in the first place, but now I need some kind of solution to make it look good, so I'm like, I'll just paint it this flat satin black color, and your eye won't be drawn to it at all. Which, as you will see here in just a moment, I think ended up looking actually really nice. Here's some kind of honestly pretty ugly particle board, but it doesn't look that bad painted black. Okay, so that cedar shortage that I was talking about, this is the reason why I couldn't mess up the main desk. I wouldn't have enough to restart. I'm going to build a keyboard tray. You know, like one of those really cool slidey out things. You can put your keyboard or your MIDI and pull it out from underneath the desk. Yeah, that's what I'm going to attempt to do. At this point, I feel like a woodworking master, and I'm just redoing the process that I did with the main desk, but with a few modifications. I'm not trying to glue row by row or in sections. I'm just gluing the whole thing down all at once. I also switched from Gorilla Glue to this Titebond 3 Ultimate, and I really like the Titebond 3. Nothing against the Gorilla Glue. I really love their super glue, their tapes and all that stuff, but this Titebond ended up working really well. Now, I think part of the reason the Gorilla Glue wasn't as good is because it was out in my garage longer and it was colder and it was kind of thicker, whereas this was straight from the store, room temp. It was runnier in a nice way, and honestly, I used it a lot more this time, so it's probably more user error than product, but I had a better experience using the Titebond, that's for sure. Basically just the exact same process as before, but just a little bit more improved with the mistakes and lessons that I've learned. This little keyboard tray is 4 feet by a foot, so that can fit a 61 key keyboard on it if I wanted to. And I wasn't even going to attempt to clamp this down because I found out that me and clamps don't really work really well together. And I'm not gonna glue it on top of a table and let it dry. I'm gonna put it on the ground where it's nice and flat, because like I said, that was a huge mistake, and you'll see again at the end of this video. I'm starting to think ahead again, and I do some tests for finishes. Here's just some like cutting board oil, some butcher block conditioner, some polyurethane, and a lacquer. I wanted to go natural if I could, but that cedar was super soft, and I ended up choosing the lacquer. It looks super awesome, is really easy to put on, and I think that it would bring out the color of the cedar the best. I ended up having to sand 3 days on this project. All the sanding that you saw so far was just the first day. After I filled in all the cracks, I had to do all that sanding again. And you didn't see it, I sanded by hand all the way down to 300 plus grit. But even without the finish on the table, I think it's looking super awesome now with the final sand on it. And all I gotta do is just repeat the steps with this little keyboard tray. It's glued down, I just need to cut the edge flush and paint the bottom black, and then make these little attachments where it will hang down from and paint those black as well, and peel it off and make sure that the paint didn't get stuck to that cedar. And the cheap Amazon tape ended up biting me in the butt once again. It leaked through this time. Honestly, I'm super happy that this didn't happen with the main part of the desk, so I'm just kind of like, whatever. I try scraping this off and sanding it a little bit. I get the color dull. I'm just gonna have to live with it. There's honestly really nothing that I can do at this point. All that's left is just prepping it for the lacquer, and that just requires me wiping over and over and over and over again, probably like 8, 9, 10 times to make sure that there's no dust on it. And after the course of an entire day, waiting 30 minutes between each layer, and I think I got around 10 to 12 layers of lacquer, it was finished. I just covered it in plastic overnight so that it wouldn't collect any dust or dew. I consider myself a courageous man in most instances, but this project had me cowering in fear for a couple of reasons. The first was the gluing down of the planks. That was my biggest fear. Its maw hung over me, gaping, ready to sink its fangs in. And the second was the finish. What kind of finish was I gonna do? Am I gonna ruin the entire thing with the finish? That was more of like a nuanced fear, a dark mist that lingered. And thankfully, it turned out great. Although I had to go through 3 of them, those unfortunately priced little cans of lacquer ended up being the heroes of this story. They made this thing look and feel amazing. I had to turn my attention away from wood towards something that I felt a little more confident in, that of steel and alloy. I needed to deal with all of the hardware, the nuts and bolts of the drawer and the slider and the keyboard tray. I didn't want these sticking out and looking stupid, so of course I painted them black. Like everything else, I wanted them to be dark and mysterious and unnoticed. Yet for some reason, I forgot how to paint, and I absolutely obliterated these things, soaking them in black, which was a mistake. They ended up flaking their paint a little bit, of course. I should have gradually done one layer upon the other. You know, the thought that a little bit of the paint would fleck off the brackets underneath my desk, which no one would see unless they were crawling under there, didn't really bother me in comparison to all the leaps and the bounds and the milestones I had achieved so far. I found myself far from comfort once again, this time not with the mechanical skills of building, but with mathematics. I spent a very, very long time figuring out how to divide by 2. I wasn't going for an avant-garde look. I wanted the drawer slide to be center. I wanted it to be functional and perfect, and I spent a long time finding that center point. Unfortunately, I didn't take into account the width of the drawer slides and the feet that hold the drawer itself, so I had to do all those calculations once again, but now I am twice as good at math as I was at the beginning. I was at the home stretch. I had to ignore the pain in my back and push forward because I knew that the end was very, very close, which it wasn't. More on that later. Now, I'm about to make a pretty big mistake here. Those screws that I thought I was so crafty and nifty painting black so everything would match were too long. They went through the end of my board and poked out. But I saw this as an opportunity to reinvent the wheel. I could have, like a normal person, went and bought screws for pennies on the dollar, but I knew I had a grinder, and I thought, well, I have these custom painted black screws. Why don't I just grind them down to size? Now, you may be wondering what this beautiful sunset and photo shoot has anything to do with the desk, and it doesn't, but I needed to, well, you know what they say, touch grass. Yeah, I had an upcoming release, but that was far less important than spending time with my wife and enjoying that beautiful nature that is only possible because of the providence of all of this massive rainfall. Oregon is so incredible. I've lived here my entire life and I never ever get over how beautiful it is. And although the chilly winter air cut to my core and I was freezing, I felt inspired, warmed, and enlightened, ready to finish this desk. And at the same time, I ended up getting these awesome promo photos and the album cover from my newest song. But hey, why not try something stupid now? I do have my safety squints on, so I was feeling really confident once again, as usual, when coming in to grind the screw, but thankfully for my eyes and my time, it didn't really end up working. So I did what I should have done in the first place and just bought some smaller screws for like $4. I spent some more time again pretending to be Pythagoras. I wanted everything mathematically accurate so that it would be balanced and look good. But thankfully all of my math lined up and everything ended up working really well. This was another moment of truth. I had kind of just hoped for a while that it would work out. I had yet another wisdom card hidden up my sleeve, and that was the $14 drawer slides from Amazon Basics, and thankfully they ended up working really well. Although trying to attach something sideways like that doesn't work really well, but I was kind of stuck. It got in one side, it was wiggling on me. Give me a break here, you guys. I'm tired, my back is hurting, I'm at the final stretch, I want this to work out, and I finally get it popped in, and it works really well. I don't know if it's just me, but there's some things that I find oddly satisfying, like the muffled click and pull of those smooth drawer slides that worked so amazing. But what I learned in writing class, what makes a good story is something well happens for the main character, and then immediately followed something bad happens to the main character. A little pinch and ouch, and well, I kind of created the bad myself here. I honestly almost predicted this was going to happen, and I should have trusted myself, I should have drilled pilot holes, and I should have backed the legs off from the edge just a little bit. Having not learned my lesson, I didn't want to take the time to drill pilot holes. I just moved the legs a little bit further from the edge and screwed them in. Those screws were these black coated screws I found in the automobile section, and they're really satisfying. And just like that, I was seconds away from flipping this thing over. I had what I thought was a complete audio desk. That's not the truth. Wait, you'll see what happens. I had spent very little time thinking about the integrity, the structure of the desk. It didn't really cross my mind that I needed to do much. I had the backer board, I had the cedar boards on top, I had these hairpin legs, and I thought everything would be fine. And that was not the case. But that's all said in hindsight. I personally thought the desk was done and looked amazing. I asked my best friend to help me flip it over because my back was killing me and I didn't want to snap the legs off, and I proceeded to clean the rest of the room. I wanted to get everything out. You know, I don't really pride myself in a lot of things, especially stuff like gluing wood down. My confidence for that has gone really far down, although it worked out in the end. But I do pride myself in cleaning really well. You know, there's a secret to cleaning. You just gotta get everything out. I mean, pull everything one thing at a time, and as you look at it and you have it in your hands, you can determine, is this junk? Where does this go? Do I get rid of it? Do I put it somewhere else? And that really helps you organize and clean. I started to suffer from crippling tunnel vision. I saw a home audio engineer recording studio just minutes away. Now, hanging the guitars was necessary because it got them out of the way and it looks nice. I want this room to look good. I want my wife to be impressed. Hey, look, a musical room. At this point in my mind, I had finished. Although deceived, I thought I had finished building an audio desk. Completely DIY. I didn't look up any plans. I did it all by myself. And I go to hang guitars and I messed that up. It's a quick fix though. I pull it out, move it over. I had hung it way too close and there's just a little teeny hole in the drywall you can almost barely see. And although librarians receive their master's degrees to do what they do, I thought that I could kind of recreate the same magic in a mini version, and I got all my books organized by genre, and that's when I noticed. There was no denying it. Can you see it? My desk was bowing massively. I had barely started to put my audio equipment on it and it was bowing, so I knew it was just gonna get worse and worse. The keyboard tray looked straight and nice and neat, but everything else looked horrible. I quickly had to come up with a solution, and it was a relatively inexpensive one. My dog was more disappointed than I was at this point, honestly. No, he's fine. He just always looks like that. It goes without saying, those are some steel perforated L bars, I guess is what they would be called, and I painted them black, of course, so that they would match. And they ended up accomplishing two things, but more on that in just a second. I did learn my lesson finally this time. I know people can change. I drilled pilot holes this time. I did spend a reasonable amount of time at the store bending these bars, or rather not bending them. I really wanted to make sure that they wouldn't bow under any weight at all, and I got some pretty thick steel bars. And what is usually the case if a mistake happens and you don't spend your time whining and complaining, you're better for it. You learn. I came out of the other end of this mistake having some benefits. I persevered, I learned to keep going, I figured out how to make a desk straight, and yeah, it was straight now. Those steel bars ended up working really well in keeping it straight. They also ended up helping with cable management. This mistake made me go get these bars, which happen to have perforation, which really the only reason I did that was because they weighed a little bit less, and I wouldn't have to drill my own holes through the steel, but they ended up working perfectly for fitting zip ties through to hold my cables in order. But it is high time that I swiftly shut my mouth and let you take a look at the finished audio desk.